Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of Fair Housing Act investigations. And we've got a document here that's, well, it's like a detective's handbook for ensuring equal access to housing. Let me tell you, it's got some eye-opening stuff in it.
It's amazing the lengths these investigations go to. We're not talking about just a quick chat. This is serious stuff. Meticulous documentation, in-depth interviews with witnesses, analyzing data.
Yeah,
They even scrutinize things like handwriting on tenant files.
handwriting analysis. Wow, talk about attention to detail. But seriously, what can they actually get from something like that?
It's about finding those little hints about someone's intentions. Say, if an applicant gets rejected, they might compare their file's handwriting to accepted applicants. If things are wildly different, could point to bias.
You're kidding. So even the tiniest thing matters. Shows you how seriously they take these investigations. So where do they even start? Is there like a standard procedure they follow?
There is. The source really stresses a well-defined plan for the investigation. It's their roadmap for the entire process, make sure they cover all the bases.
Okay, so let's break down this investigative plan. What are the main parts?
First things first, you got to figure out the problem. What exactly is the discrimination being alleged? Refusal to rent, unequal lease terms, something else. Once they've got that, they see which theory of discrimination might apply to the situation.
Hold on, are you saying there's more than one type of discrimination they look for?
Absolutely. There's disparate treatment, which is intentional discrimination, plain and simple, like refusing to rent based on race. And then there's disparate impact. That's when a rule seems neutral, but it ends up hurting a protected group more. Think of a credit score requirement that disproportionately disqualifies people of a certain ethnicity.
So it's about going deeper, beyond the surface.
You got it. And a big part of that is this idea of similarly situated individuals.
Similarly situated individuals. Okay, that's a new one. What does that even mean in this context?
Imagine an African-American family gets denied an apartment. Investigators, they'd compare their experience with other families who applied around the same time, similar qualifications, but not African-American, where they offered different terms, where their applications looked at more closely. It's about spotting any differences that could point to bias.
So you're looking for patterns, subtle differences that wouldn't be obvious at first glance. It's like those magic eye pictures. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's it, exactly. And it goes beyond just interviews and what people say. Documents, records, those are a gold mine too. Leases, applications, financial records, they all feed into the big picture.
You're telling me those dusty old file cabinets could hold the key to the whole case.
You bet. One thing I found really interesting was how the absence of certain documents can be super telling.
Oh, that's sneaky. Tell me more about these missing documents.
So imagine if rental applications from, let's say, single mothers, they just keep disappearing. Or financial records go missing when certain ethnicities are involved. These missing pieces, red flags all over the place for investigators.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not just what's in the documents, but what's missing, right? Connecting the dots, even when some are invisible.
And that's where the investigator skills come in. They got to be observant, have a good understanding of how people behave, because they need to determine if the information they're getting is credible.
That's true. People's memories can be fuzzy. And let's be honest, not everyone's always truthful, especially if they think they've done something wrong. How do investigators figure out who to believe when the stories don't add up?
Well, they focus on a few things.
Hmm.
First off, how well does the witness remember what happened? How long ago was it? Were there distractions? Could they be misinterpreting what they saw or heard?
So even someone trying to help could get things wrong if their perception was off.
Exactly. They also think about any potential biases the witness might have. Do they know anyone involved in the case? Could they benefit in any way from a particular outcome?
Like in those courtroom dramas, could the witness have a motive to lie? But this time it's a real investigator, not some dramatic TV show.
You got it. And of course, they look at the testimony itself. Does it line up with other evidence? Any big inconsistencies or contradictions?
So they're like human lie detectors, going over every detail to separate fact from fiction. But what happens when someone just refuses to cooperate? Do they just give up?
No way. HUD investigators, they've got other tricks up their sleeves to get that crucial information. It's not always easy, but they're determined to see things through.
Okay, so what happens when someone just clams up? What can they do then?
Well, they can start by issuing a formal request for data. It's more serious than just asking nicely, sends a message that they mean business.
I bet that adds a bit of pressure.
You bet. And if that doesn't work, That's when the subpoenas come out.
Whoa, subpoenas. Things just got real. So basically, there's no escaping these investigations if you're in the wrong.
Not if HUD has anything to say about it.
It sounds like these investigators have their work cut out for them. But seriously, it's good to know there's a system in place to tackle these issues and fight for equal housing.
Absolutely. And this document really shows you how much work goes into making sure everyone's rights are protected.
It's not just about catching someone doing something wrong. It's about making sure everyone has a fair shot in the housing market, no matter who they are.
Precisely.
Subpoenas, missing files, even analyzing handwriting. Sounds intense, like something you'd see in a movie. But this is real life, and it's about something as essential as having a place to live.
You said it. And those tools are powerful, but the real challenge is understanding the law and applying it to each case, because every situation is different.
That makes sense. It's not just checking boxes, it's about putting all the pieces together and making sure things are fair. So we've talked about gathering evidence, but what happens after they have all that information? Does it just sit in a file somewhere?
Not at all. Remember, the whole point of these investigations is to determine if there's enough evidence to say discrimination likely happened. It's about finding the truth, not just collecting information.
Right. So it's about reaching a decision, a conclusion. What happens next? Who makes that call?
The investigators, they take everything they've found and present it to HUD's decision makers.
So there's a whole team, multiple people who look at the evidence and decide.
You got it. It's a multi-step process with different levels of review to make sure things are fair and accurate. No snap judgments here.
I see. Another layer of checks and balances. Makes sense. So let's say they find enough evidence to say discrimination probably occurred. What then?
Usually the next step is conciliation.
Conciliation. Okay, not a term you hear every day. What does that even involve?
Think of it like trying to settle things out of court. It's like mediation, where HUD tries to bring everyone together to find a solution that works. A win-win, ideally.
So it's about finding common ground, fixing the problem without a big, drawn-out legal battle.
Exactly. The respondent might agree to change their policies, maybe offer compensation to the person who filed the complaint, or even go through fair housing training. The goal is to help those who are wronged and prevent it from happening again.
Sounds a lot more constructive than just slapping on a fine and calling it a day. It's about a real, lasting solution, not just a quick fix.
That's the idea. And often it really is the best and quickest way to handle these complaints.
But what if conciliation doesn't work? What if they just can't agree?
Well, if that happens, if they can't reach an agreement, HUD can file a formal charge of discrimination.
And that means court.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
The case might go before an administrative law judge or even to the Department of Justice for legal action. It gets serious.
Wow. So things can escalate pretty quickly if they have to.
They can, but it's important to know that HUD's main goal is to resolve things fairly and efficiently. Litigation, going to court, that's a last resort.
Right. It seems like they really prefer finding a peaceful resolution whenever they can.
They do, but they're not afraid to use their authority when it's needed to protect people's rights.
It's been quite a deep dive today. We've covered a lot: investigative plans, witness testimony, even subpoenas. It's clear these investigations are incredibly thorough.
They are. And that meticulous approach, that's how they uncover those hidden patterns of discrimination, the stuff that's not always obvious at first glance.
Like you said earlier, even the smallest details can be crucial.
100%.
Oh.
And sometimes those details, they pop up in the most unexpected places. Handwriting on an application, a document that's mysteriously gone missing. It's all connected.
It's amazing how those seemingly unimportant things can come together to tell a bigger story.
Exactly. And it's the investigator's job to uncover that story and make sure justice is served.
So to put it simply, HUD investigators, they're like detectives. They use their sharp eyes, their understanding of people, and their knowledge of the law to untangle these complex cases of housing discrimination.
That's a great way to put it. They're out there fighting for fairness in a system that can sometimes feel rigged against certain people.
And that's a fight worth fighting. It's about making sure everyone has an equal chance to find a decent place to live, no matter their race, religion, where they're from, any of that.
Could agree more. It's about a housing market that's fair and equitable for everyone.
And that brings us to the heart of the matter. We've talked about the process, but what does it all really mean? Why should our listeners care about this, even if they've never personally experienced discrimination when trying to find housing?
Now, that's the million-dollar question.
Because this isn't just some abstract problem, right? Housing discrimination, it has real consequences for real people. We're talking about whether someone has a safe, affordable place to live or ends up in bad housing, maybe even homeless.
It's true. And it goes beyond those individual situations. Every investigation, every time a landlord or property manager is held accountable, it builds up a better understanding of these problems. And that makes enforcing fair housing laws even stronger.
It's about creating change, one step at a time.
That's it. Shifting the whole culture of the housing market, making it more inclusive and fair for everybody.
So even if someone listening thinks these issues don't affect them, they really do. These investigations matter. It's not just about individual cases, it's about a fundamental right that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And remember what we talked about. Knowledge is power. Knowing your rights and how those rights are protected, that's huge. It lets you stand up for yourself and for others who might be facing discrimination.
Being able to spot those subtle signs of bias, keeping records of everything, and knowing where to go for help when you need it.
That's the key. Don't be afraid to speak out if something feels wrong, feels unfair. Your voice matters. And you never know. You might even inspire others to do the same.
Well said. This deep dive has been honestly eye-opening, even for me. And I thought I knew a thing or two about fair housing. I've learned so much about these investigations, how they work, and how dedicated those investigators are to making sure everyone has an equal chance at finding a place to call home.
It's complicated for sure, but so important to address. And by talking about these investigations, putting a spotlight on them, hopefully we can help create a future where everyone has a real shot at safe, affordable housing free from discrimination.
To everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of fair housing investigations. We hope you've learned some valuable things today, and maybe, most importantly, that you feel empowered to stand up for what's right.
Remember, the fight for fair housing, it takes all of us. Stay informed, stay engaged. Let's keep working towards a more just world for everyone.